Hello everyone. Today we are going to talk about connecting rods for this L-head engine that we're rebuilding. I've actually got a CJ2A L-head and I've got an M38 L-head. And there is our rod checking device, and I'll show you how we use that. Here is our cap grinder, and I'll show you how we use that when we grind one. I've got my checking devices here. These come with the rod alignment machine if you need to straighten a connecting rod out. And there are the ugly bolts that came out. You can see that one's in rough shape. No threads left on that one. I do have the correct bolts. As you can see, it's got the correct shoulder length. Don't just go over to your hardware store and buy connecting rod bolts. These are on the Willys rod. They're just a clamp style bolt. They clamp the pin in there. But you don't want. You need the correct shoulder length on there, and don't just go buy Chinese hardware store bolts and think it'll be all right. So. These rods I've measured, they're way oversized, and I have the most oversized rod over at the honing machine, and we'll put it on the scale there, and I'll show you just what happens with these rods after they're in an engine for a while. So let me get set up over at the honing machine. I'll meet you over there. Okay guys, this is where I do all the rod honing. This is a Sunnin 1802 machine. It's got an automatic stroker on here. I don't use that. I just use it by hand right here. This is our checking gauge right here. Okay, so you set your pins here, the dimension you want, and that will correlate to the 0 on the gauge. So we're going to put the rod on there. We'll test it sideways, up and down, all around, and I'll show you what it looks like. Okay guys, I'm going to try and do this without getting in the way. There is our connecting rod. We're going to measure that. So I'm going to hold this up and down vertically and show you what we got. We're just about on target there. And that was, again, that was held vertically. And we're going to move it sideways. We're going to check it. We're not even registering, so we're already 2 thousandths too big. And if I move it, we're not even close to measuring. We're going to flip it around, measure it that way. Nothing. And as we turn it, I'm almost vertical, and you can see we're starting to get it. Oh, it fell in a hole there. Okay, so you can see how out of round that is. I'll try and take you where you can watch me doing it. Okay, so when we're vertical, there's an oil hole there, but when we're almost vertical, we're right on size. Okay. Watch what happens. We're picking up clearance, we're picking up, and we go right off the scale. So we're over 2 thousandths out of round on this rod. So, you know, a lot of guys will rebuild an engine and they won't measure these, they won't resize them, and then they'll wonder where all their oil pressure is. They'll call me up and they'll be like, I just had a fresh engine rebuilt and I have no oil pressure. you will lose a lot of it if you don't have the right size big end on your rod. So all the rods are between 1 to 2 thousandths out of round or oversize. So we're gonna have to go in. We're gonna have to cut the rod. We're gonna have to cut the cap, and then we'll get them back to the right size. Let's go back over to the bench. We'll talk about sizes and oil clearances, and then we'll start checking the rods for straightness and start cutting the caps. Okay guys, the next thing we're going to do, now we know these are all oversized. Next thing we're going to do is just check to see if we got any bad ones in here. So we got a spring-loaded guy right there. We got a stop. That scale out of the way, we don't need that. And that clamps the rod in good. Now, we've got all our old pins from the original pistons. Don't use your old pin. I'm going to go grab a new pin from the new pistons, put it in there, and I'll show you how we go about checking it. Okay guys, let me get you zeroed in on that. I got a new pin in there. Okay, now we're going to take our checking device and wipe this down. I keep this oiled when I don't use it. It's a precision surface, and so is our checking tool. So we're going to take that, and that could slide anywhere for any size rod, up, down. We're going to take these 2 feet, and we're going to put them against the pin. Move that pin out a little bit. It's a little tricky. Okay, now that's going to hit up against the pin. And then we check. We can see by eye, or we can use feeler gauges in there to check and see that it's hitting both pins and our rod is not twisted. We'll come over here, we'll sit it down on the top. And again, we'll see if our rod is twisted that way. Check all around it. I don't know if you can see in there. I'm going to try and hold the camera for you so you can see what I'm doing. Okay, there goes our gauge. We're tight up against our machine, and I think you can see it's hard to hold the camera and everything at once. But we're going to check all our rods like that and check and see if there's any twist to them. You don't want a twisted rod. Like I say, if it was twisted, we could take these tools, stick it in where the pin is, and move it. I've got so many rods and stuff that I don't bother with straightening them. I'll pick a better one if I need it. But if you're working on an antique vehicle or something and you need it to save the rod, you can do it with the straightening bars. So I'm going to run through the rest of them, and we'll make sure they're all straight, and if there's any bad ones, I will let you know and show you what it looks like. But normally they don't go terribly bad, but they are worth checking because I do get them from time to time. Okay guys, the bore on your big end from the factory should be 2 inches, 43 thousandths, and 2/10, or it goes from there to 2 inches, 44 thousandths. So you got an 8/10 difference that you can be in the size of that. Your oil clearance is 1 thousandths to 1 thousandths and 9/10. So just under 2 thousandths, 1 to 2 thousandths you get away with. Now on that big rod, we were already over 2 thousandths big. So that's basically, that's at the point where you might start hearing a rod knock. It's so big. So that's bad. And this, like I say, this is where it seems like maybe overkill to you guys doing this, or it seems a lot of guys don't understand why you need to resize rods. And I get that all the time. Nobody really wants to go the extra mile and resize them. And I can't guarantee or even want to do your engine if you don't want the right oil clearances. So we know that rod that was oversized so big, it would have never worked. We would have had very, very low oil pressure. And like I say, so many people get an engine back and they're like, I have no oil pressure. Well, this is one of the first places to look, because it's so overlooked and people think it's just not necessary. Well, if you want your engine back to factory specs and want it to perform right, you have to do every step. So this is critical. I can't express that enough. But you know, everybody has to decide what they want their engine to be like. So I don't like to put out junky engines, so I do this to just about every one because it needs them. Now there's a rod. We're going to put this cap in the grinder and grind that surface. We're going to knock these studs out. You just knock these out with a rubber mallet. There's nothing hard about it. It is a special rod bolt. Okay, and then we're going to grind this surface. When we put it together, it's not going to be round anymore, but it's going to be smaller. And then we take it over to the honing machine and we do it. This was the biggest rod. This is the one that was the most oversized. So we're going to cut it. I'm going to get it set up in the grinder for you guys, show you how to cut it, and then we'll take it round again. So I'll show you the whole process. Okay, there's our grinder, and it's nothing fancy. That's an older Sun unit, but it works great. And let me get set up and I'll show you what we're doing. Okay, we're going to get our rod cap in there, and we were going to push it in there until both edges are hitting the wheel. We're going to clamp that down tight. Okay, now this is going to go in this fashion. It's going to move like that. Okay, so we'll get that spinning, and then I'm going to dial in 1/1000. So we'll take 1/1000 off this cap. So let's turn it on. Okay, that was a 1/2 thou. There's the other 1/2 thou. Okay, I think you guys can see the new shiny area. Okay, so we took a little bit off there. We're going to do the same thing with this guy. Push it in there until both sides are hitting. Okay, lock it down. We're going to turn it on and do the same thing. There's a 1/2 thou. Okay guys, we've got a nice surface on there. Now if I take it over to the machine and that's not enough, we could just come back and tickle it some more. I like to take out the least amount that we need to straighten the rod out. So I'm going to put these in and we'll go over to the machine and measure it and see how we did. Okay guys, we've got our rod that's been cut. The cap is torqued down. And let's see what we got now. Okay, you can see we're way undersized right now. Let's get that turning around. So you can see we've got about 2 thousandths to take out of that. You know, it fluctuates, but roughly 2 thousandths we're going to take out of that to make that back to where we need it. Now I've got this set halfway between our limits, 2-inch 0.43 and 6/10. That's halfway between what we want it. So when we hit on that 0, we know we're in good shape. So we're gonna get the machine turned on, get the oil flowing, and I will try and not get in the way. I don't know if I have enough room to set the camera up. I'll put the camera somewhere and I'll show you the honing process. Okay guys, I think you can see this alright. We've got the rod on our mandrel, got a little bit of oil flow, and we're just going to step on the pedal, slide that back and forth. Now at the beginning, when we're a little bit out of round from cutting that, it's going to feel a little weird on there. But we're just going to hone it, try and get it close to size. And it's getting rounder every time we do it. I think you can see the nice finish it leaves in there. I'm just going to quick check it. And it doesn't take much to take out a couple thousandths. And we're going to turn the machine off. And I'll try and zip you around and show you the gauge again. Okay guys, I think you can see the gauge. I'm just going to put that on there. And without me wiggling, we're right at 0. And that's exactly where we want to be. So after cutting it, I don't know, we maybe had a little over a minute of honing because I don't like to cut too much off. And we are right on size with this rod, and we know our oil clearance is going to be right because we know our crankshaft was turned by a quality craftsman. And if you got a good crank guy who takes pride in his work, he'll hit that every time. And if we take the same care the crank grinder did, we will have perfect oil clearance. So I have to do this to the other rods, and we'll get that done, and then we can move on to putting the pistons on and putting these in the engine. So I know it seems like a lot of work and it seems like you need a lot of stuff to do it, but if you take your engine somewhere and they're not resizing your rods, that would be an indication, you know, for me not to have a shop like that do an engine. But this is a necessary step in 99% of the Willys engines that I rebuild. It really, the rods have been in there for years. They've taken a beating. Try and show you. You almost can't even see the parting line right here when you hone it properly. You can't even see it. It's such a beautiful finish in there. So that's what it should look like when it comes off the honing machine. And if you take this, you take your engine to a shop, Ask them if they're going to resize the rods. If they don't, I would think twice about that shop. You know, and I do this for other guys, for other engines, Chevy V8s, and the quality engine builders that are out there. You know, if they don't have this machine, I do get some outside work from other shops that know how important connecting rod oil clearance is. So, just trying to show you guys how to do things properly and have a long-lasting engine and have good oil pressure from the day you start it up. Okay, I'm going to get busy on those other 3 rods. I'll be back with you in a little bit. Okay, here are the 4 rods. And they are honed to the perfect size. Right in the center of the factory spec. And you can see what a nice job that did. Now, a critical thing after honing is you've got to clean out the oil hole where the oil spray hole is, because you get some grit in there. So we're going to take that over to the parts washer, wash them out, and then spray them clean with some acetone. And we want to make sure we get a good flow through the oil squirt hole. And now that they're honed, these bolts were torqued to the what the operating torque is going to be. So when you take the nuts off and you go to disassemble that and put your bearing shells in, I see a lot of guys go after that with a hammer or something. I'm just going to show you a quick little something I made. You can buy connecting rod separating tools. I'll just show you something I whipped up and been using it for a long time. Okay, when you put a connecting rod together and then you go to take it apart, you know, sometimes they can be a bear. Sometimes they'll fall apart, and sometimes they won't. So I just had an old junky vise. I welded a couple pins on it and put some heater hose over it. Like I say, you can buy these. It's better to get an older one if you can find it. The new ones are just kind of made in China and they break a lot. So I just take this and I start unscrewing the vise. Don't take a hammer to it, you know, and if you do have to take a hammer to it to tap it around, don't use a steel one. And boom, there she goes. They can be a real bear to take apart. Don't go at it with a steel hammer or anything. If you got an old junky vise, you could just make one yourself, and they work great, and it takes it apart. Now we could take that apart. We can put our shells in there and assemble it to the crankshaft. So just a little something I do. I've been using that one for a long time. It's been with me for a long time. And if you don't have one in the shop, you could just quick make one up. Or like I say, if you have to get one, those new ones are real cheesy. Try and find a good one if you're going to do any type of rod work. Okay, we're going to head over to the parts washer, get these cleaned up, get that squirt hole working real good, and we're in good shape. And we know we got 4 straight rods. We know we got 4 properly sized rods, and when we start this, we know we're going to have very good oil pressure. Okay guys, here's the last step I like to do. 2 of these rods were really plugged up in the oil squirt hole. So I have to go in there with some tip cleaners, get all the junk out. I don't think these were working when they were in the engine. It was more than just the honing grit. Okay, we're going to squirt through there. And you can see it coming out the squirt hole. Hope you can see that okay. But you've got to know that oil is going to flow out of that area. Otherwise, you're going to score the cylinder. So physically watch that happen. Okay, now we're going to take one of our bolts. We're going to put it in there. That rod is set. That's ready for bearings and installation. And we're going to go through every rod. I'm not going to show you every rod, but you get the gist of what I'm doing. Let's see if that one's clear. That one's squirting good. And we'll clean it anyway with a tip cleaner. We'll hit it one more time. Yeah, nice flow out of that one. So make sure you get all those right. Physically watch it come out, and you'll know that you'll have good oil splash on your cylinder. And again, the bolt that's going to go with it. And that's about it. I know it was kind of a lot of information just on connecting rods, but it's one of the areas I see a lot of bad work. Either they're too big and customers complaining of low or no oil pressure when they bring it in, or it's just so out of round it just beats up the bearing so fast, and then you quickly on a rebuilt engine will get a rod knock. And I've seen them twisted and really messed up when I put them on the rod checker. So you sometimes can see a twist in it, but a lot of times it's not that much, and you got to check it on the checker. So I know we kind of beat this to death, but it is an important part of your engine. It's just like when you guys see me cut valve seats, the 3-angle valve job, critical. Resizing rods and putting them back to factory specs is also critical. It's one of the main areas where you're going to lose oil pressure. Other than having your crank turned wrong through your mains, you're going to lose a lot of oil pressure through your 4 rods. So make sure they're right. If you're having an engine done, make sure you can at least see what your rods look like. Have them put them on the machine for you, and you'll see. One way you might be in spec, the other way you might be out 2000s. You can't run those rods in these engines and expect a long life. Alright, I think we're just about finished with the rods, and if it was boring to a lot of guys, sorry about that, but I need to get this information out there to you. Maybe that'll stop so many bad engines from coming back to me from other shops. So we're going to end it here. And as always, appreciate everybody watching. And I will catch you on the next video. I don't know, we may be on the M38, or we may be back on this engine here installing the rods. I'm not sure, but we'll see you then.